Let's talk about this now. Onion prices should be making you cry as they shot up by 63% over the past year. That's according to Bloomberg's Shisanyama index. Now, it tracks the cost of braai ingredients using data from the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group. For more insight, we are joined by the group's Mervyn Abrahams. Thank you so much, Mr. Abrahams, for joining me this morning. Of course, I think I spoke to you a few weeks ago, and we talked about how the cost of living, is a huge crisis in this country, and how the price of a food basket has gone up drastically in the past few years in South Africa and probably worldwide. But 63%, the cost of onions, that is a staggering figure, and this is only in the past year alone. How exactly, within the context of South African food prices, is this affecting South Africans?
So good morning, and good morning to all your viewers. Yes, so as you correctly said, that we are going through a cost of living crisis, and in particularly we are going through a food price crisis. Food prices have increased in terms of our basket of 44 very basic foods for over about 7% over the last year. We have seen food prices across a range of foods increasing. So correctly, as you've said, onions have gone up by 63%, but potatoes have gone up by something like 47%. We're looking at maize, which has gone up by 6% at retail level, even though the commodity price, so the farm price, has gone significantly down over the past year. We have seen rice increase by 17% over the last month, by 8% alone. We've seen sugar increase by about 17%, pilchards increase by about 7%. So really households are under immense stress. And the difficulty actually is that onions and potatoes and chicken, and we're expecting chicken prices to go up because of the avian flu and because of the slaughtering of almost about 30% of the laying capacity of chickens in the country. So we are expecting chicken to increase, and those three ingredients are almost staple core foods that South African households almost must buy. So they will continue buying onions, they will continue buying potatoes, but what they will drop out of the basket are things like your lettuces, your green leafy vegetables, your fruit, your other kinds of foods, which of course is very bad from a nutritional aspect and very bad from a health perspective. So that's the kind of crisis we are facing in South Africa at the moment.
And it's so interesting that you mentioned that, because I spoke to someone in the health sector a week ago about, South Africa's dietary choices and how, the most vulnerable and the poor, they are left with no choice when it comes to, certain foods. And unfortunately, that does affect our health in a very serious way, because we are left with so little options when it comes to especially choosing healthier foods. Now, when it comes to the households, especially the poorer households in this country, how is this exactly affecting them? And then I think more particularly, the overall well-being. Let's just, touch base on that again as well.
So essentially the choices, so what we are hearing from the ground is that households are cutting back on the amount of food that they consume. So they eat less meals because they just do not have enough money to buy sufficient and nutritious food. So they cut back on the amount of food they eat. They also cut back on the diversity on the plate, as we've just spoken about. So they will go in for more maize. They would eat a bit more bread, but that's all starch. And of course, with starch, it feels like you've had a meal, your stomach is full. But of course, the diversity is what contributes to proper nutrition. So it's cutting back on the amount of foods that they eat. It is also then, of course, cutting back on the diversity of the foods they eat. And in many cases, it is just that people are actually starving. So the Department of Health has said that about 15,000 South Africans last year had to be admitted to hospital because of undernutrition. And we believe that that is just the tip of the iceberg, that actually many households in South Africa are starving and people are entering up into our hospital sectors, into our clinic sectors because of absolute starvation.
And it creates this very unfortunate domino effect in essence. But I think then the question is, Mr. Abrahams, what, if any, government policies or interventions are there to address this crisis?
So the real crisis actually is an economic one. It's the fact that so many South Africans are unemployed because we're net buyers of food. We access our food at the retail end. So we're net buyers of food, and in order to access that food, we need to have money to do so. So when you look at an unemployment rate of something like 40%, then we see that people just do not have the money. Those who do work and earn at the level of the national minimum wage. Now, the national minimum wage, for instance, would have brought in something like 4,600 Rand this month, while the cost of the basket of food is over 5,000. So you can see that kind of your buying power is just not enough. So it's an economic issue and an income issue. And then further on, what we also need to say is that the retail sector is perhaps not fully coming to the party. We see that the retail sectors are maintaining their kind of percentage markup, while farmers are not benefiting really from these increased prices. Farmers are price takers. So the increases are happening within the value chain. And we at the moment, our value chain is not transparent. So we don't know where these increases are coming from and whether these increases are in fact justified. That's another area that we need to look at. And finally, we need, as a matter of urgency, to bring more small-scale farmers into the farming sector.
Very, very true. It's such a huge crisis, and it has so many various elements to it that needs to be addressed. So thank you so much for your time, Mr. Abrahams, this morning. Of course, it is quite the issue here in South Africa, and like we just heard, 63%. That's just onions, and like Mr. Abrahams mentioned, that list of a South African basket, basically those individual ingredients or products, basically, that has also skyrocketed. Sugar, for example, also almost 20% higher than what it used to be. So the list just continues, and hopefully this could be something that the NEC in Boksburg, the ANC NEC would be discussing, this living cost crisis. That is definitely something that needs to be on the cards there in that meeting.